So um, we're here in curfew. Not yet. It starts at 10 at night um, to try to stop people from protesting or whatever here in Orlando. Um, the evil part about this is that you know all of this people that are outraged at the protests in general. They don't want anybody protesting to begin with, and they 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 attacked um, Colin Kaepernick for kneeling down. The president called his mother a bitch. Told to get fired. They boycott anybody who does peaceful protesting. They burn up their Nike, their Keurigs. They do all this, which is, destruction of property. It's their own property. I get it. But some of them go as far as, attacking these people. Um, Anybody who Trump tells them to hate, they hate. I mean, you don't see any protests uh, or this people on the right wing protesting or calling the white supremacists who armed themselves to the teeth and stormed uh, the Michigan um, Capitol uh, to intimidate and spit on the faces of cops and talk in their faces, making them more susceptible to catching any virus that they had. They don't consider those people thugs. Those are patriots because they're white and, they're protesting a Democratic lady governor that, so they basically stopped the process of protecting people's lives, which actually ends up killing people by not allowing the government to impose stay at home orders to save lives. So those protests not only were violent um, in the way these people stormed uh, this white supremacist, uh, heavily armed right wingers stormed a government, an official government building, um, but only in the deaths that they have caused and the people whose suffering they have increased. But none of these people, they don't protest. They don't protest when they don't say anything when Nazis march. Nazis. Remember, Nazis. These are the people who caused the death of 70 million people in World War II. It wasn't just 6 million Jews. World War II's death toll was 70 million. And these people are walking around in our streets being called by the President of the United States fine people. Nothing happens. That's okay. You know, when black people and brown people like me and people of color of all ethnicities protest peacefully, we get um, ostracized. Uh, Mike Pence walked out on the protest on that football game that day to make a statement, against um, the peaceful protest. Uh, so peaceful protests get mocked, ridiculed, shunned, you name it. And after 400 years of pillaging and murder and slavery and Jim Crow laws and redlining, mortgaging, uh, and you know, segregation and mass incarceration and being shot at by police 34.5 times more than uh, their white cohorts and being arrested 11 times more than their white cohorts, um, you know, and being killed by police and the police getting away with it and they given 18 months of vacation with paid salary and being acquitted. And most of the time, all this stuff never gets prosecuted unless it's filmed. Um, After, I don't know, I mean, how many millions of rubber bullets and dogs fired and launched at us and, you know, sent to attack us for peacefully protesting, uh, when the people erupt in in violent protest, all of a sudden they're thugs. You see the disparity. So, you know, here's what I, you know, people say, oh, you're you're condoning or you're sponsoring violence. I'm not. I'm explaining it. I'm explaining why it happens. The fault of all this rioting is solely on the shoulders of the abusive right wing government that sponsors the violence, that has been sponsoring the government, the violence towards black and brown people for the better part of 400 years, you know. So to do an analogy, you have a spouse who's been abused by her husband. She's poor, she has no access. She's then kept poor by her husband, you know, on the threat of violence, sometimes death, to not educate. She's not educated. Her skills are limited. She's been kept in the house forcefully, you know, without access to finances, to money, to nothing. And when she finally has the courage to call the cops on this guy who's been abusing her forever, doing all kinds of horrible things to her and her kids, not her kids, maybe her, maybe her kids, we don't know. The cops laugh in her face and tell her to go back to the kitchen and we'll look into it. And this happens over and over and over. And all of a sudden, the husband comes home one day and he raises his hand at her one more time. And she grabs the guy's shotgun and blows his head off. And she gets treated like a criminal. You know, think about that one for 1 second. You know, who's the criminal? Who's the criminal? The system, the government is the criminal. They go out and they take people's tax money and they give it to their rich buddies, while, you know, the black kids and the Latino kids in the Bronx, and, well, we don't get any of that tax money for our schools, for our roads, for emergency services, you know, for health care. They take help, you know, you got a buffoon up, mass murdering buffoon who's, you know, by negligence and default and wanton negligence and awful administration and just really evil deeds of withholding funds from his governors who oppose him, to treat the coronavirus, has caused the death of over 100,000 people by delaying, by refusing to take, you know. So all of these, you know, we're getting killed by Donald Trump out here. People are getting murdered every day by Donald Trump's actions, of his horrendous, if you could call it handling, butchery of the handling of the coronavirus. Um, so all of that pressure, and you have 40 million people that lost their jobs, and I don't know how many millions lost health care, and he's now attacking healthcare to take pre-existing conditions and lying about it. And you have this fascist organization called the White House and the Republican Party, the modern Republican Party, today's Republican Party, acting as the Fourth Reich, you know, openly asking his supporters to go confront, start a fight in the streets against the protesters, and calling for the assassination of these protesters by saying, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, like shoot them all. Those are racist, old school dog whistles. You know, so think about it when they're protesting and they're burning up, and then you have these guys out there, and then you have Trump egging on racist people, and all those were nice people when he talked about Nazis, and when he talked about the racist white supremacists with guns who stormed the Capitol in Michigan to intimidate, spit on the police and everything. Oh, they're good people. They're just having a bad day or something. But when it's people protesting the murder in broad daylight of a black guy, those are a bunch of thugs, and the rest of the insults that he launches towards people protesting police brutality, and which side of history you're going to be on. I support the protesters. Enough is enough. So instead of trying to fight the protesters with the army and shoot them all and all this stuff that the right wingers are calling for, maybe and this bullshit, well, I support peaceful protest, but no, you don't. No, you don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't be boycotting or calling Kaepernick's mother a bitch in supporting Donald Trump, which is what he does. Just respecting people who peacefully protest. So, be real. Be honest with yourself. Which side of history do you want to be on?